Hello, everyone, and welcome to the annual AgeTech Market Outlook webinar. I'm Karen Etkin, and we can get started in a few minutes. I just want to make sure that you can see my screen. If there are any issues with my screen, please let me know in the chat, because it looks on my side that it is being shown. By the way, this meeting is being recorded, so you don't have to take any notes. And we will have time for Q&A at the end. So yes, feel free. The chat is disabled. How do I enable it? I'm not sure why Zoom disabled the chat, but you can go ahead and type your questions in the Q&A box, because I see that this one is working properly. Thank you all for joining live. It's great to see so many familiar names in the audience. And I will just start my slide and we can get started. So hello and welcome to the annual AgeTech Market Outlook webinar. This has become an annual tradition. It is very exciting to see you all here once again, year over year. And when I looked at the registration data earlier today, I saw really an incredible mix of people. And we have everyone from startup founders all over the world to VCs to elder care professionals. So it is really, really exciting to see how diverse this ecosystem really is and how dedicated and passionate everyone is to just improving the lives of older adults. And I also have read some of the answers that you have entered to our questions in the registration form about what you would like to learn, and whether you're here to understand sort of what's the funding landscape like in 2026, or how is AI impacting everything, which it obviously is. We're about to dive into all of that and more. But before I'm going to dive into the new, I want to just start with a reminder of how quickly some of the old stuff is leaving us. So we are currently at the intersection of two huge phase-in/phase outs. So on one hand, we have old technology infrastructure like landlines and copper phone lines being phased out. And on the other hand, we have AI sort of sipping into everything that we do, not just everything that we do for work, but into our personal lives as well. And it's really fascinating to me to see that, although we used to think that it would be people who do manual labor who will be replaced by technology, or at least those will be replaced by technology first, what reality shows us is that people who work in the real world with their hands are not being replaced at all, while we have so many white-collar workers who sort of have a big question mark on the next few decades of their career. And honestly, I don't know what I would do in this day and age if I were starting out, if I was like in my early 20s trying to figure out what I'm going to do for a career, or what type of degree am I going to get. I don't know what I would do, because it is just becoming so hard to predict. So how does this all matter for us in AgeTech? So we're going to talk about how the global trends that impact everything are going to impact AgeTech as well. We're going to, of course, recap 2025 because it was actually a really exciting year, more exciting than a few of the years before, and certainly more forward-looking. We're also going to talk about some of the emerging opportunities for startups and the predictions for 2026 and beyond. So let's start with a recap of 2025. So first of all, I want to talk about the fact that year over year, we have just more and more startup funding for AgeTech startups, which is really, really important, especially for early stage ventures, because bootstrapping is not for everyone. And certainly for hardware startups, you need some funding to launch a product. You can't just do it as a 1 or 2 or 3 person show like you might with software. So we have 2 new funding opportunities for AgeTech startups, 2 new funders, actually. One is a traditional venture capital fund, Equitage Ventures, which launched a $47 million fund. And the partners are Russell Hirsch, who is a veteran venture capitalist with 30 plus years of experience. And he's also the co-founder of Generator Ventures, which, if I'm not mistaken, that is like the original AgeTech fund. I believe they were the first. The other 2 partners are Adam Kaplan and Daniel Kaplan, who are not related to one another. So Adam Kaplan is the founder and CEO of Solera Living, and he brings lots of operational and entrepreneurial experience. And Daniel Kaplan is a gerontologist like myself. And he's also an investor. He was also at Generator Ventures, and he was also an operator in 2 AgeTech startups. And so that is really, really exciting to have a new dedicated AgeTech fund. On top of this, we have a new investor network called the AgeTech Investor Network. So this is a collaboration between AARP's AgeTech Collaborative and AgeTech Capital, which is an AgeTech fund out of Canada. So what the AgeTech Investor Network is, it's basically sort of like a crowdfunding platform in which both of these organizations, the AgeTech Collaborative by AARP and AgeTech Capital, bring together their knowledge and expertise and access to the market. And they bring startups to the network so they can look at it and possibly invest. So this sort of bridges a gap and brings more early stage funding to the ecosystem, which is so greatly needed. The last thing here is that we finally have some startup fundings. So we actually have startups getting funded, and we actually have startups raising significant rounds. So Duos is like the biggest round from last year. That was $130 million funding. Duos, by the way, connects Medicare beneficiaries and their caregivers to the resources that they need to figure out what they need to get their best health outcomes possible, and they also help health plans improve the well-being and satisfaction of their older adults that they care for. So that was just an example. We had multiple startup funding runs in 2025, more than 2024 and more than 2023, which were really, really difficult years after the interest going up, right? Remember, by the end of 2022, we were no longer at a 0% interest rate world. And when interests have gone up, startup funding in AgeTech and in other sectors as well sort of has gone down significantly. So in 2025's AgeTech Market Map, we had over 300 companies and we had almost $700 million in funding that was raised during 2025. And I've seen multiple double-digit funding rounds in 2025, which is great because in 2024, I could count them on one hand. So that was a really difficult year. Sorry, the winter dryness is really getting to me today. And so we have multiple companies make their debut appearance, around 60, and 37 companies that actually raised funding in 2025. So overall, I would say that the ecosystem is doing really, really well. It has bounced back from the difficult years of 2023 and 2024. And I am really looking forward to things ahead. Now, we've had some big initiatives in the AgeTech ecosystem or adjacent to the AgeTech ecosystem this year. The first is AARP and Amazon and Google and Walmart collaborating to launch the National Elder Fraud Coordination Center. And so we know that elder fraud is a huge billion-dollar, multiple billions of dollars problem, and that scammers are getting more and more sophisticated, and it's very, very difficult for everyone to not fall victim to scams and fraud these days. So that is a really, really phenomenal initiative that everyone should be excited about because it will help society, it will help all of us. We never know what can happen to our older loved ones in this regard. And we also have OpenAI and AARP's OATS, Older Adults Technology Services, that launched an initiative to help older adults use AI confidently and safely. So I think the first thing that they announced is a tool to help older adults sort of send suspicious incoming communications to ChatGPT. So ChatGPT could help them spot and avoid scams. But that is like just the first thing that they announced. They're also going to expand AI training nationwide via both the Senior Planet centers that are like in person and their online training, which last time I checked, the online training was absolutely free. So this is really, really great. We also had a new innovation studio opened in Toronto by AgeWell. So people visiting Toronto could now, if you're a startup, you could apply to showcase your solution at AgeWell's Innovation Studio. And if you are a potential buyer, if you are a leader in an elder care organization, or if you're an elder care professional, you could potentially visit the Innovation Studio and see what is currently being presented and participate in the creation of the future of AgeTech. On top of this, we have sort of AgeTech adjacent initiatives. So we have CVS Health, who has announced a $20 billion commitment to health tech initiatives. For example, the single patient record, which is honestly mind-boggling that it hasn't happened so far. So everything that this will enable doctors to do and pharmacies is to share a fuller picture of what is going on with the patient. And there are multiple other sort of sub-segments to these initiatives that are really, really interesting. We also have Google India launching a program to help employees care for their aging parents, which, again, I think is really, really great to see more and more big organizations really sort of acknowledging the fact that they have employees who are family caregivers. That is the first step. And then the second step is to actually be proactive about it and actually support family caregivers, because we know, and we'll see in the reports in the next few slides, when people spend years and sometimes decades in the role of a family caregiver. And we are very, very likely, each and every one of us, we either are a caregiver or we were a caregiver or we will be a caregiver. So if you have older loved ones, it is inevitable. And we also have Mayo Clinic investing $1 billion in AI over the next few years, which is really, really mind-blowing. And we'll see how the healthcare sector overall has sort of taken a turn for the best and is adopting AI at increasingly growing rates these days. Now, we also had some new or renewed revelations when it comes to the cost of dementia in 2025. So one report from MIT's Age Lab and AARP policy found that the median household of older adults drops by more than half in the 8 years leading up to a dementia diagnosis. So that's one data point that is showing us that dementia costs not just the healthcare system or not just the government, but it actually costs families a lot, not just in out-of-pocket spending, but also in potential falling into scams and fraud and all sorts of things that happen when a person is declining cognitively and they're not being diagnosed yet, or they haven't been diagnosed yet. And on top of this, USC's Schaefer Center for Health Policy and Economics, they found that the cost of dementia in 2025, total cost of dementia, was almost $800 billion, right? So we have these two numbers and we look at sort of the sheer number of people who are currently diagnosed with dementia in the United States, and you sort of see that it's a fraction of the 65 plus population, and yet this is a very, very costly problem. And I would really love to see more startups tackling it from different angles. We also have robotics, actually humanoid robotics, sort of taking more and more steps towards our doorstep in our homes. So what NVIDIA did this year is they released the first customizable model of humanoid robots, right? So this is the world's first open humanoid robot foundation model, which should allow robot developers everywhere to build the next frontier in the age of AI. So I'm really curious to see what will come of this. And we've also seen researchers from UCSF demonstrate long-term control of a robotic arm with a person with paralysis. So this is also a really, really interesting article in Cell. So I'll have the link for you later on if you want to dive into it. And if you're into neurology, that would be super interesting. We've also had researchers create a new blood test for Alzheimer's that aids in the diagnosis of the progression of the disease. So far, the existing blood tests diagnose dementia, but they are not really able to diagnose the stage, which is important because sometimes treatment only works in the early stages. So it will probably take some time until the FDA approves this and this is commercially available, but this is a really important milestone. And now for tech adoption among older adults. Last month, we have seen AARP release their 10th annual Tech Trends and the 50 Plus report, which was really, really interesting because we got to see a comparison of what was the tech adoption in 2016 and what is it like in 2025, approaching 2026. So we already know that older adults are increasingly adopting technology and that they own an average of 7 devices and at least one primary device. But what was interesting to see in a 10-year comparison is that people are sort of ditching their old cellular phones in favor of smartphones, and also that they are getting less desktop computers and more laptops and tablets. So this feels like a shift from like having one device in the living room or in the workroom that everyone uses to now each member of the household has their own device or multiple devices. So this is really, really interesting. And we've also seen the 70 plus population adopt technology increasingly, which was sort of the age bracket that traditionally lagged behind. I mean, if we were to look at the 50 plus demographic, the 70 plus typically lagged behind, but they have been closing the gap very rapidly, which makes sense because people are advancing with the times, and today's 70 plus year olds are really nothing like the 70 plus year olds from 2 decades ago. What are older adults doing with the technology that they have? Well, they spend a lot of time on social media. So according to Age of Majority's report, 85% of older adults over the age of 55 are on Facebook, and they're also on every other social network, not just as consumers, but also as content creators. And they also follow influencers. So they follow people that they don't know. It could be Martha Stewart, could be Oprah Winfrey. And this is sort of a hint to marketers that you can actually hire people to do social media marketing. You don't necessarily have to hire Martha Stewart or Oprah Winfrey because that would be expensive, but you can hire other influencers that older adults follow and that they trust to promote your product, basically, like everyone else does. Another interesting data point from last month about tech adoption among older adults was from the Linkage Connect report. They also have an annual tech adoption report. And they were actually able to sample a larger portion of 75 plus year old women. And what they found is that for their demographic that they have surveyed, the biggest barrier for tech adoption was not knowing what to buy and just keeping up with the latest technology, which in AARP's report is only sort of the second factor, awareness. The first barrier is trust and privacy. And older adults have also been adopting AI. So Pew Research Center has shown us that AI adoption has grown dramatically. So from 4% in 2023 to 10% in 2025. And you know who else is adopting AI? Healthcare providers, the healthcare industry. So this was, again, one of the most surprising reports of the year. So the healthcare industry, which traditionally is a laggard in tech adoption, they are now adopting technology more than the other sectors, adopting AI more than the other sectors, which is really a dramatic turning of events. And what's even more interesting is that they are actually adopting AI from startups rather than from the incumbents. So this is a report by Menlo Ventures, and it is really, really interesting. I do encourage every healthcare startup to check it out. And senior living industry is also adopting AI. A report from Ziegler Linkage and Leading Age Cast found that, at least in the nonprofit senior living sector, AI adoption is growing significantly more than fall detection technology or wellness monitoring technology, which have been around the longest. Now, a potential explanation could be that this is just technology that is easier to adopt because it's software and it comes built into Windows, but it is still really a remarkable data point that they found. Now for the sort of the macro trends. We have, first of all, humanoid robots that are available for pre-order. I believe this is the first time in history we had the possibility to go on a company's website and pre-order our own humanoid robot. So you can buy your own for $20,000, or you can get a subscription for $499. And what I found super interesting about this launch or this product announcement is that they actually used older adults in their marketing materials on their website. This is a screenshot that I got from the first page on the website, and there are videos on the website of an older couple sitting around in their home enjoying life while the robot is dusting and vacuuming. So I thought that was a really, it's an obvious use case for a humanoid robot, but I thought it was really, really great to see that this company took it one step forward and really chose to showcase older adults in their marketing materials, which most tech companies don't do. We also have the unfortunate trend of hospitals and pharmacies shutting down. So this is, in the United States, this is really, really extreme, with thousands of pharmacies and hundreds of hospitals. So that is really extreme in the United States. However, we can see a similar trend in other countries. So in Canada, Australia, and the UK, we've seen workforce shortages lead to service downgrades or unit closures or nighttime shutdowns. Can you imagine going to the ER and being told that they don't have enough staff to open it at night, so you need to find another ER? And for pharmacies, it's a sort of a mixed trend. Some countries see pharmacies shutting down because the costs of operating a pharmacy are rising faster than they are able to generate revenue. And in some other countries, it stays the same. But nevertheless, this is a really, really concerning trend, especially in rural areas where people just don't have alternatives. We also have AI assistants all over the place. So every tech company and some government agencies have launched AI assistants over the past couple of years. So Alaya Care and Get Set Up and Carevocacy are just examples from our own ecosystem. We've also had the FDA launch an agency-wide tool for their employees. They did have some hiccups with that one, but it seems that now everything's on track. And we also have a growing caregiver sector. So AARP and the National Alliance for Caregivers launched their report this year that they published every 5 years. So we see a significant increase in the number of caregivers from a decade ago. And currently, 1 out of 4 Americans, almost 1 out of 4 Americans, is a family caregiver. And what we also have seen in this report and in the other tech trends report is that caregivers are desperately looking for technology to support their caregiving efforts, but they just don't have enough options. And also they don't know what they don't know. So it's very difficult for them to figure out, among everything else that they have to do, it's very difficult for them to figure out what technology even exists and how to find the right solution for them. And we also see old infrastructure being phased out, which impacts people in rural areas and older adults in rural areas. So we've had AOL discontinue its dial-up internet service. And just yesterday, AT&T got FCC approval to discontinue service, their like copper line service at more than 30% of phone lines by the end of this year. So these two changes could potentially have an impact on older adults. One, because the cost of high-speed internet is more expensive than dial-up internet, if it exists, because it doesn't exist, in rural areas sometimes, even if someone is able to afford it. And when it comes to copper phone lines are a very reliable infrastructure, so it works even when the power is out. And the question is, when they replace this infrastructure with digital infrastructure, what will happen to people who relied on it, who live in areas where there are power outages during the winter because of extreme weather? So will they provide everyone with backup batteries? That sounds expensive. How is that going to work? There are a lot of open questions here, and that I hope that either telecom providers or regulators might answer. And now I want to talk about the opportunities and the predictions for the future. So first of all, when we see that there are care deserts emerging, so people don't necessarily have a hospital nearby or a pharmacy nearby, that is a really massive opportunity for startups, for ambitious startups, because this is a big problem. So first of all, like off the top of my head, medication deliveries could happen with drones. It's like a temperature control, like a last mile problem. And also, we've seen startups try to bring emergency care to the home. And we've been hearing about hospital at home initiatives for a few years now. But I feel like this problem is just getting more and more urgent with each passing day. So I'm hoping that we will see more startups try to tackle it, because it really, I mean, it's a public health crisis if people can't access healthcare and they don't have an emergency department and they have no pharmacy to get their medications. This is a really big deal. I also believe that, and also Werner Vogels from AWS, is the CTO of AWS. He released a report saying that companion robots could be a game changer for lonely and socially isolated older adults, and I couldn't agree more. I believe that, we currently, with all the technology that we have, and all of the traditional solutions that we have, we still have a massive challenge of loneliness in our society, and it has a negative impact on people's health that is equivalent to obesity or equivalent to smoking. And so we have to fix it somehow, and technology has to be part of the solution. And social robots are just one option out of an array of options we have at our disposal already. So these solutions are already in the market today. And I also believe that caregiver robots are inevitable. So we have humanoid robots that are available for pre-order. It will take time until they are able to do sensitive stuff like provide assistance with ADL. But even helping people carry groceries, load up the dishwasher, arrange a pantry, change a light bulb, even that, if the humanoid robots that are shipped later this year or early next year, if those are able to do even a fraction of what it takes to maintain a house, then that will be a game changer for aging in place and for alleviating caregiver burden. Not just the sort of the burden on the family caregivers that have to come and basically manage another household on top of their own, but also the financial burden, because the cost of care keeps rising and we have a global caregiver shortage. We simply don't have enough people. And $499 per month is significantly more affordable than paying thousands of dollars for a human caregiver. Now, I'm not saying that they will be able to replace human caregivers, but hopefully they will be able to do a lot of the manual work that doesn't require a human. You don't need to be human to load up a dishwasher or to fold the laundry. These are not uniquely human skills. They don't require any uniquely human capabilities. They don't require emotional intelligence or anything of the sort. They require being able to perform a task, and that's it. And I also really, really hope that we'll see augmented reality glasses become mainstream. I don't know how many of you have seen the Meta Ray-Bans display announcement a couple of months ago, but I, as someone who wears glasses, I'm incredibly excited about these. And I am really looking forward to having my phone replaced by my cameras that I already have on my face in all waking hours. So these glasses already have, according to the Meta Ray-Bans announcement, they already have the capability to sort of provide you with live captions to a conversation that you're having. They can bring up your text, they can bring up a map. So they can really be a game changer, not just for the sake of convenience, but also as a form of assistive technology. And one last prediction that I really hope to see either this year or next year is I would really love to see some of the non-technical founders in our ecosystem who are, just starting out and considering how to build this great idea that they already have in their minds and that they've spent so much time researching. I would really love to see the technology advance to the point where a non-technical founder could build a startup and launch a product and have it not just commercially available, but also have the backend all sorted out and having it secure enough to actually communicate with users. So that might take a while, but with how fast everything is progressing, it could happen in 2026, who knows? And before we dive into Q&A, I've got a little announcement to make. So we've already talked about what the next 12 months are going to look like. Or we hypothesized about why they're going to be critical for AgeTech founders. And I want to announce today that I'm officially opening our pre-order for the ultimate AgeTech startup blueprint. And I'm taking everything I've learned from a decade as a gerontologist and a product leader and a startup founder and advisor. And I'm bringing it together in one blueprint that is available for pre-order as of today. I'm going to paste the link in the chat box that I hope you'll be able to see, even though they told me that it is not working. So we currently have the ultimate AgeTech startup blueprint available for pre-order, just for $299 for the pre-order period of about a month. And the first 20 people who sign up before Friday get a 30-minute one-on-one strategy audit with me on Zoom. So if you're ready, sign up right now to lock in your spot at the pre-order pricing. Now we can dive into Q&A, and I see that we already have a bunch of questions in the chat box. So yes, we will have a recording to watch. And I see that we have a question from Costin. So in the US, we've got over 22 million citizens over the age of 70. And while the majority use tech, there are still 26% who don't use tech. So Costin is wondering what they do and why they don't use tech. So this is a really good question. I think we've seen some of the reasons in the tech trend and the tech adoption reports. People are just confused and overwhelmed by all of the options. So it is very, very challenging, even even for young adults, to figure out, like, if you need to buy a new phone, or if you need to buy a new fitness wearable or smartwatch. There are so many options today. How are you going to choose? I feel like confusion is part of the problem. And also, as the ARP report shows us, trust and privacy are big issues. I feel like people who are developing consumer technology aren't always doing a great job at communicating and addressing people's privacy concerns and letting people know what type of data is being saved and how it's being saved and how it's being used. So I feel like we could definitely do a better job. And if anyone has any other thoughts on this, I would love to hear them, because it's a good point. Thank you, Costin. I also see we've got a question about AgeTech innovations in consumer adoption between developed countries and underdeveloped. So I haven't seen any reports on tech adoption in developed countries other than India, which I know that smartphone adoption among older adults is really, really high. And in many developed countries in general, there are more smartphones than other computers, because it's a pocket device and you can get Android devices for really cheap prices these days. So they are dominating in developing countries. But when it comes to age tech, I haven't seen a lot of age tech startups in developing countries. I've seen some kind out of Thailand. And there are obviously some in China that are government owned, but I haven't seen that much. So I'm curious if anyone has seen any. Please share it with us. I see it. We have another question about humanoid robots and the hype around them. How do these possibly get paid for in healthcare into the home? Who's studying ROI? So I haven't seen any research on the ROI. I don't think we have humanoid robots that are available to even study ROI, that like do enough to show ROI. And who is paying for them? I mean, the early adopters will pay out of pocket. And I bet that there will be well-funded research groups globally who will try to really test them out in home settings and check the impact and see if there is ROI. And maybe a few years down the line, we will see healthcare providers paying for them because they will maybe understand, thanks to research, that they delay the transition to a long-term care facility. Maybe. It'll take time. It'll take a few years now. And we also have a question about whether AI will be able to solve aging. So I think what's really interesting is that people are already utilizing LLMs to try to solve really hard problems, like scientific problems. And maybe there will be a scientific breakthrough when it comes to biological aging. Who knows? And we also have a question about what are the other big advancements we will see for caregivers and care recipients in the next 5 years. So I think it's really hard to predict the future at this point in time, because generative AI is advancing so rapidly and it is changing everything. including the work that we do, and it is very, very hard to predict what will happen. I think robots are inevitable, but other than that, I don't know. I mean, we were supposed to get 5 years ago, I predicted, we were promised that we will have autonomous vehicles by 2025 all over. Right now, we only have them in a handful of cities around the world. So I'm still waiting for my autonomous Uber to come pick me up. And so it's very, very hard to predict. I really hope that we will see more startups serving caregivers. That's all I can say, because it's really, really, this is a really blue ocean. We also have a question regarding AI adoption in healthcare and what exactly happened. So one of the things that physicians are adopting are they're using AI to transcribe meetings, right? So instead of having a human medical scribe, they are using generative AI to transcribe meetings. So what's interesting is that we've had the technology to transcribe audio for a few years. So speech to text technology is not new. We've had it for years, at least a decade, as far as I remember. And what we've seen right now is AI using medical scribes, replacing medical scribes and transcribing doctor's appointments. And there was even a lawsuit last year. So there was a patient that actually sued. I don't remember who exactly they sued, whether it was the physician or the clinic. They actually sued because there was transcription used during their doctor's visit that they claimed that they did not know about, and they also didn't consent. So we see that. We see AI trying to sort of analyze all sorts of imaging. And I believe we also have had success with AI analyzing X-rays or mammograms or sonograms. So that is another big use. And I can't remember what other stuff healthcare providers are using it for. But a lot of it is just making things more efficient on the back end, which is great. And we have a question regarding where is the increase in senior living use of AI. So I haven't seen any operators developing AI solutions internally. From the report, the two major tools that senior living providers are using are Microsoft Copilot, which is a tool that comes built into Windows, which is no surprise. People are using it as sort of a first solution. But people are also using ChatGPT, which does require them to be more proactive and go get it. So these are the top two tools, and many people are using both. We also have a question about all the adults who are providing part-time assistance to their parents and do not identify with the term caregiver. And they are slow to find resources due to that. What alternative terms are people having success with? I think this is a really, really great question. And you're right that so many people don't define themselves as caregivers. So they certainly don't go on Google searching for caregiver resources or caregiver technology. I think instead of like looking for alternative terms, it's just a matter of coming to the realization that if you are caring for an older loved one, even if it is just part-time, and even if you're doing it remotely, you are a family caregiver. And I mean, I think we can change language. Language is a live thing. It's evolving. And if there are any caregivers in the audience who would like to offer alternative terms, I would love to hear them. But I think the word caregiver is actually a really great word. And we have another question about older adults who are worried about trust and privacy, and how would this affect the adoption of humanoid robots? And there are no stats and data on whether people are specifically worried about trust and privacy when it comes to using AI or voice assistants. Although, I mean, theoretically, that would be more concerning than typing in your query, because it saves not only your query, but also your voice. But I don't recall seeing specific research on that. And when it comes to robots, I think at the end of the day, it's a matter of, honestly, if people understand how sensitive it is to have a humanoid robot in your home. Because honestly, I'm very much looking forward to having a robot butler. However, I would be concerned about potential privacy concerns. I mean, it could just unlock the door and let someone in. That's on like on the far edge of the spectrum of things that could go wrong. And the thing is that we have our devices collecting so much data on us already. It's just another device that happens to have access to our home and happens to be able to move around in our home. And I guess we'll just have to go through an adjustment period of getting used to it. And eventually, what I assume will happen is that it will happen like it happens with every technology, that people just trade off some privacy for the sake of convenience, like we do with our phones, like we do with our trusted generative AI that everyone is using today. And we tell them our deepest, darkest secrets. And we just do it because it's convenient and because it makes us more productive. And that's just the reality of us as tech users today. I hope this helps. Still not sure how to enable the chat. Oh, I got it. So I enable the chat. If anyone has anything to contribute in the chat that is not a question, you can go ahead and do it. We got another question about, given the latest tech adoption trends, AgeTech today isn't about creating technology specific for aging people. Rather, a better focus is about making all technology accessible to older people. So first of all, why not both? Why not make technology accessible to everyone? And also make specific solutions for older adults. The reality is that when we grow older, there is a new set of challenges that comes with biological aging, which we still haven't solved. There's a new set of challenges that comes with biological aging. We are at a completely different stage of life post-retirement. For many of us, it is the decumulation phase, whereas until retirement, it is an accumulation phase. And so people have different needs, different motivations, and also different abilities sometimes, both cognitively and physically. So I believe we'll still need dedicated solutions, but the interfaces could certainly be better. I mean, the consumer technology certainly has a lot of improvements to do. So I hope this answers your question. Any interesting updates on the future of personal mobility rehab solutions for aging population? So what I see and what I really hope to see commercially available as soon as possible are sort of these personal mobility solutions like the exoskeletons that people already use in agriculture, and I've seen them used in healthcare settings in Europe to help lift patients. So I'd really love to see a miniature version of this, just helping people move in their house, outside their house. We'll get there eventually, but I, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know what the barriers are, but I'm really hoping that we'll get there sooner rather than later. We've got another question about whether NGOs or philanthropic organizations are looking at subsidizing AgeTech for caregivers and families. So unfortunately, no, I haven't seen any. Although I believe that this is definitely something that philanthropic organizations or NGOs could get into, because we already know that technology access is a sort of a social determinant of health. And it is really, really important. Because technology is so expensive, it would really provide a huge value to society if more people can access technology that improves their health outcomes and improves their lives generally. And yes, I see a comment saying that the smart home can already manage robot vacuums, pool cleaners, lawnmowers, etc. Yes, that is true. However, getting all of these is incredibly expensive. And also the question is, do you really want to have so many robots around in your home and have so many charging stations for all of these robots in your home? I mean, if you have a robot for every function, for every chore, you will end up having to have a dedicate a room in your house just for the robots to charge. So I don't know how sustainable that would be in the long term. And we've got a question asking, what are the key triggers for caregivers or older adults to seek AgeTech solutions? And how do solution providers reach them at those moments? This is the billion-dollar question. So I think a lot of times the key trigger is a crisis that happens. However, in a crisis, people's bandwidth there's like a lot of competition on people's bandwidth. They have a lot of fires to put out when there is a crisis. So the advice that I would always give to AgeTech startups is to start working on your marketing and on your sort of market education, if you need the market education, way before you have a product that's ready to launch, because you want to make your presence known. You want to make sure that you are building an audience around the problem you're solving, and you're building an audience around your brand and around your product, and not just wait for a crisis and hope that people will find you. I hope this helps. I have a question about companies assume that there is a clear need the clear need translates to adoption. And then they learn that this is not how it works. So yes, unfortunately, that is part of the problem. That is sort of one of the gaps that we have in the market. We have so many great solutions that solve a real need. However, there are so many barriers to adoption. First of all, people need to know that the solution exists. and where to get it, and they need to be able to afford it, and it needs to fit into their lives so they won't return it. So it's a multifaceted challenge that startups in our ecosystem are solving or trying to solve. And the decision-making process, there's research about the decision-making process, actually. There's a recent Cake Ventures and Springbank report that shows us that primary care physicians, or actually healthcare providers, and financial advisors are among the top 3 influencers on buying decisions. And I see that we are already at the top of the hour, actually 1 minute past the top of the hour. So I want to thank you all for coming. I want to apologize for everyone I didn't get time to answer your questions. We had a lot of questions today. And we will have the recording available to you hopefully by the end of this week. And I invite you all to subscribe to our free newsletter. And if you're building an AgeTech startup, check out our pre-order campaign for the blueprint. Thank you all for joining, and have a great rest of the week.